You had mentioned something about meeting with a glass of wine, but I
Yep.
see you have a cup of coffee.
Today we tea.
Tea.
Oh, today we tea. It's been a long day at work, and then I've been watching the news nonstop, just like, staring at CNN and going back and forth. Like, oh,
Yeah.
today we tea. Oh,
Yeah, it's been a
yeah,
heavy day.
it's been
Mm.
a heavy day. Oh, Kelly, I think you're right. I think this is where you met Joe. Well, now you're best friends, so you're welcome. And you don't. And listen. That's just you're welcome. Now wait, Kelly, are you coming to AATSP? Okay, you should probably come. Okay, well, if it works out in the budget, Joe's coming down, and it's here in Atlanta. Whoop, whoop. Just saying, in person. ... We're gonna be vaccinated and fancy free, whatever. We're doing. I don't know. Joe, July ? July 8th through 9th. I should probably pause the recording. Nobody cares. And all the things. Ta-da! Yay, Nelson, get down here. Just leave Rhode Island for a few days. It's not a big deal. We actually, now that I look at it, Dr. Bhattacharya, I don't think we have anybody here. Let me remember the names. I think everyone from here is like in the meeting right now is not in Georgia. So it's like, I know we've opened it up. It's been really, of course, it's been really, really, really fun. But it's fun to see some of the Georgia people because they're all, over the place. So this has been, it's been a fun few months. So if you haven't been with us before, and I think I only don't recognize one name, my name is Meredith White. I teach Spanish 1 and 2 just outside of Atlanta. Dr. Bhattacharya, whichever way she is on your screen, she's here for me, teaches, let's see, you're about 45 minutes east of me in Athens, and she'll introduce herself in a second here, but we're excited to welcome you to Georgia. We, of course, can't meet, but here we are. So this is night, I should keep a count. I had a sticky, but I've thrown the sticky away. So like night 30, I think, of 40. Joe up in the corner is the last one. So Joe's pulling up the caboose June 3rd. So we'll have about 6 more weeks. So maybe it's more like 20, 27 or 28. And so this recording is available with all of the previous ones. And I've mentioned before, but there's 10 or 11 of us. Would love in the chat if you could mention where you are, where you find yourself these days, and what it is you teach or supervise or assist with, whatever your affiliation with language or language education is. And Dr. Bhattacharya, I'm going to throw it over to you just to tell us where you are these days and what you're up to.
Oh man, I've only been in Athens for the last 14 months. Have barely stepped out of my house. But really enjoying visiting so many wonderful spaces through Zoom, and video chat's always been a very important part of my life since my family is in India, and we have networks in other parts of the world. But it's been interesting navigating relationships with people who are a few blocks away from me. Only virtually. So hi everyone, thank you for having me. My name is Usree Bhattacharya, and I'm an assistant professor in the Language and Literacy Education Department at the University of Georgia in the Mary Frances Early College of Education, and that is where I met Meredith. I'm sorry.
Please.
Meredith was in actually a call class with me. We were looking at digital technologies in the classroom, and she was a rock star. Man, I learned so much from her. I'm pretty sure I learned more from her than she did from me in that course. We were very, very fortunate to have somebody who was so seasoned and so fearless in using technology to draw in students in language learning. And honestly, I've never met anybody who's been that motivated and driven and invested in exploring different technologies to enhance their students' learning. So it was a pleasure to really see the world of language learning technologies through her eyes in the classroom. And so that was our major connection. And I'm so grateful, Meredith, that you invited me and allowed me to bring in what is really very much front and center of my research universe, and also my personal life, my daughter, Kalika. who I'll be talking about in a couple of minutes. Could we do a real quick, I see, I'm just gonna scroll through because I see introductions here. So hi everyone. It's really the chat is hopping. There's so many people here, very, very exciting. I myself, and that's my daughter, and that's one of the wonders of Zoom. She's not appreciating her dinner tonight, and I was keeping my fingers crossed, but not to be. She's 5, so she gets a lot of rope. But I was telling my husband, Jonathan, that, oh, try to keep her quiet through the dinner. She's right next door. He's like, you're talking about her. I think they'll understand. You have a 5-year-old daughter who's eating dinner and crying. My research in language learning, well, let me just very quickly say that my life has been very multilingual. I'm born and brought up in New Delhi, India, as a first language speaker of Bangla. I learned Hindi in my environment. I was immersed in it constantly, so I consider it nearly as close as my first language. I've had interesting experiences. I did kindergarten in the Netherlands, so I did not learn Dutch and at 4, and growing up in Delhi, I think English was my 4th or 5th language. There was a lot of different languages around me, including Urdu and Sanskrit that I studied for 10 years, but really is very much confined to religious practice and trying to decipher some odd text here or there, but still important part of my devotional world. But when I was older, when I was in college, my dad didn't think I knew enough languages, so he dragged me to Alliance Française de Delhi because that's what fathers do sometimes, and he knew that I was not going to go and learn French by myself. So to incentivize it at 19, he was like, I'll go with you. Sure, that's what a 19-year-old wants, her daddy in the classroom. So it was very odd. He had a very like many decades, he had a relationship with at the University of Paris, so he would go and stay there for many months every year. And so he wanted to learn, and so somehow we ended up learning for a couple of years, and I stayed on for 1 more year. And then as a rebellion, I took a crash course in German because my dad wanted me to learn more French. It's like, nope, I'm gonna learn German. And then I went and did an MA in English literature in Canada. And then after that, I got a job in Indonesia where I'd never been my entire life. Landed there and realized that nobody spoke English. I was there to teach English, but in the streets, in the markets, in the restaurants, you could not get by with English. You can't get by with English. You have to know Bahasa Indonesia or any of the local dialects. That was my experience living in the capital in Jakarta. And so I learned enough basics, which I forgot way too quickly. But over the course of time, I ended up going to Chico State in Northern California for my master's in teaching international languages, because I became interested when I realized that I didn't know how to teach English. I was teaching students for 2 years, but I didn't know what I was doing. And that was very frustrating and led me to, try to get a master's degree in the teaching side of it. After that, I did my PhD at Berkeley, and so I spent many years in Northern California. And but for my dissertation and much of the work until about 2.5 years ago, my work focused on looking at how these young boys at the language and, young boys at an orphanage in suburban Delhi, my hometown, how they were, so I investigated how they were learning different languages with the principal focus on English. And they were first language speakers of Bangla like me, second language speakers of Hindi, spoke regional dialects. Some of them spoke Nepali and Punjabi and and Tamil, but we shared 3 languages. And I was really interested in the politics of English and the ways in which it serves to reproduce inequalities within the Indian educational system, and how having English as a medium of instruction denies poorer Indian children access to language and content. So that was most of my life until about 2019. In 2015, I had a daughter on December 24th, the apple of my eye, and just the most extraordinarily beautiful child
Ever.
and she is, she's something else. And 2 years, when she was hitting about 2 years, which is the time that you being asked questions about milestones, we just started noticing some things going off. And about the day after her second birthday, she was speaking about 84 words. I know because I counted them. 84 words in mostly in Bangla, about 95% in Bangla, our first language, and then about 5% in English. Her dad is American. He's very multilingual in his own right in many, many languages, but he also actually learned English after meeting me. Bangla, not English. He knew English all his life. That would be weird. But anyway, he learned pretty good Bangla. So Kalika was getting a lot of input in Bangla. And then she just stopped talking. We could not get her to talk consistently, and she was down to like 5 words. So from 85 on her second birthday to almost not talking. And then she developed and her eyes turned. So she developed what is loosely called a lazy eye. And then she started doing a clapping motion. And it was funny and cute for all of 5 minutes. And then she was doing it every minute of every day, all day, every day. She was just doing this all the time. And we've been watching it happen for the last 2.5 years. So it's what's called a regression. And this was part of a regression. And then we were leaving for France that summer, and so the doctor saw her do this clapping thing and said, "Let's, there's one test we have to do," because she stopped being able to hold her spoon, she stopped being able to play with her toys, because if you're clapping, you can't hold anything, you can't touch anything, and she's stopped being able to self-feed and everything. So we went to France. We came back the day after we came back, super jet lagged and all. We went to the neurologist's office and we are told the results came back, and it's something called Rett syndrome, a rare neurological disorder. And it's exactly like what anybody who is in that position tells you. You have no sense of what it means. You've never heard the term before. You furiously try to Google on your phone because what they're giving you is like a 1.5-page printout that does not tell you anything. I was also told she would never go to school, she would never talk, she wouldn't find a partner, all kinds of ridiculous, future prophecies that nobody in the medical care business has the right to say to a mom or a dad of a 2.5-year-old, because you don't know where the world is heading from a medical perspective, right? Anyway, so that brought our world to a standstill. Being in education, being from this incredibly multilingual, rich background, nothing prepared me for a child who could not talk, right? So I was doing all this research and a PhD and everything, looking at, multiple languages. And here, my daughter was not going to be able to talk, period. How do you reconcile that? So that night, after the dust settled somewhat, I Googled this and this syndrome and went to Google Scholar, and I saw the only thing I found related to education was the word ineducable. And I couldn't understand what that even meant. I'd never heard of this word in my entire life, that there were people considered ineducable. Now recall that until my daughter's regression, until 2 years of age, she was she was speaking 84 words in 2 languages. She was saying bonjour because her dad is a professor of French, and she would see us, and when we were in France, she was still talking. She did talk in French. She would ask her babysitter for, the encore for, when she wanted more food, which we never taught her. She picked up. So how do you go to this space? And it fundamentally altered my entire perspective on what it means, what the word language means, what it means to learn a language. Because here I had this profound disorder, and one of the most significant disability contexts known to medical science, because you can't use hands, you can't talk, mobility is limited. She used to be walking, then now since the pandemic, her mobility, she's not able to independently walk anymore. She still walks with assistance, but she developed seizures over the last year, and there's a lot of other things that are horrifying that we always have an eye on, and so, but what I did was get an IRB, an internal review board. I started a research project with Kalika. It was within the first 2 months. And so I'll be talking about them, and I'll share how Kalika speaks to me today. And also, and I'll give you guys a window into what that looks like. She's talking right now to my husband in that room, not with her mouth, but with this extraordinary life-changing device. And I wanted to think about that device and what we, as folks who've been language teachers, people who are language teachers, well, what are the kinds of issues of access and privilege and power we should be considering, when we think about technology in the classroom. And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned. So that's a bit of a backdrop on Kalika, and I have a few slides I'm happy to share. Should I go ahead and do that?
Please, incredible, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm gonna use. I'm trying to figure out advanced sharing options. I want to choose. Darn, sorry. Okay, here it is. I have to do that fancy thing where I cut portion of the screen.
Right.
And so I'm gonna just move this. And
Yay.
are you able to see? Are you seeing the slide only? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Slide, perfect.
Okay, so the title of the conversation, I guess the webinar today is Computer Assisted Language Learning from Rett Syndrome to the Classroom. And to be honest, this is very new stuff. I've been working on this only over the last 2.5 years. And it takes time to process these kinds of things because it's personal, and there's no research looking at language learning from a Rett syndrome perspective. Period. No research, especially when it comes to bilingualism and multilingualism. The research that we do have comes from a communication perspective, so communication disorders perspective, which isn't exactly the kind of work I do, but is valuable nevertheless. I'm guessing you realize that this child is mine, Kalika, and this is taken about 6-7 days ago, so a very recent picture, because the other pictures I had for you, I realized are a little outdated. So we're appreciating the spring here in Georgia, as you can see. So for anybody who's still in really cold climate, it's very nice out here. Okay, so let me switch to this. So these are pictures of Kalika taken in Paris, Delhi, Costa Rica, Istanbul in Turkey, Marseille, Germany, a whole host of other places, and 2 different places in India, because she's traveled a lot. She's traveled a lot in the five years, and actually in the only 4 years that she actually was able to travel. And languages, and as a result of being in these different places, for example, being completely immersed with a Spanish-speaking babysitter only for a chunk of the time in Costa Rica was one of her experiences. She spent a lot of time with her French babysitter in Paris. In India, she's immersed in Bangla, Hindi, and the environment, and of course, English. She gets Sanskrit from devotional perspectives whenever, for Hindu ceremonies. She also gets Hebrew because my husband is Jewish. And so a lot of circulation of different languages, and Turkey is part of the research my husband does. So she's also been in a space where a lot of Turkish is spoken. And as I mentioned, French is very much part of her daily routine. She listens to about an hour of French music a day, French Lingala actually. Very, very rich multilingual background. I'll also let you know, hear something that I think one of the first things somebody understands about my daughter. Since she was diagnosed, we found out that music is very helpful in reducing the anxieties, because it's a neurological disorder in which children can be very anxious, and she is on, she does have to take anxiety medication, but for 2.5 years, she has had music every waking second of her life, every waking second. I'm not kidding you. And so her morning begins with Benny Moré, so Cuban music in Spanish. She graduates to Bengali music, then goes into French Lingala, children's songs. She'll have some English. Actually, her dad wakes her up with English rock. Then she also, she goes to, there's her favorite genre is Punjabi hip hop. And then she listens to Hindi Bollywood. And these are actually sequential mostly. And I'm forgetting some genres here, but at night, every single night, she goes to sleep with
I just lost you. Hold on. Oh.
Universe that she inhabits, and how we've determined to allow her to be as multilingual as possible. Okay, so I want to go back to this real quick and say this occurs approximately 1 in 15,000 or 1 in 10,000 births, so it is quite rare. The two key symptoms, there's a variety of symptoms like seizures, breathing disturbances, sleep disorders, scoliosis, and others, but the things that make language almost impossible are the fact that you can't use your hands and you can't speak. What individuals with Rett syndrome, and they're almost exclusively girls, they're very handful of boys because it occurs on the X mutation. But the individuals with Rett syndrome have a preserved eye gaze. So that is what they have historically used to communicate. That's all they have at their disposal is their eyes. So using their eyes to look at things. So until Kalika got her magic device, she was using her eyes to talk. So do you want the water or the milk? And she would look, and she still does that. So you want to maintain as many things as possible. But when Kalika was first diagnosed, we were told she'd never talk, right? And things I read said things like they are, stay at the IQ level of infant for the most of their lives. They're nonverbal. And so one of the fundamental questions I started asking along with a team of students is, what does it mean to speak language? What does it mean to be bilingual, which Kalika is, and I knew even when she wasn't saying a word, she understood what I was saying in Bangla and English. What does it mean for a child to be bilingual or multilingual in, when you can't demonstrate understanding in neurotypical ways, right? So we've been doing a lot of research on this. These are just snippets for some of the things we've been doing. But I want to go to the language part of this, which is the eye tracking device, which brings us to why am I going into my daughter so extensively about thinking about computer assisted language learning and Rett syndrome. So she uses this magic device called an eye tracking device. So here you see, are you able to see me moving my mouse?
Yeah. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so here are her eyes. She's looking, so this was actually the question I asked her. This was the day after the elections, or a few days after the elections. I asked her, who is Joe Biden? And she's looking, as you can see, she's focusing on a specific cell over there that's actually got Joe Biden's, it says president, and it has Joe Biden's face on it. And what's happening is at the bottom, this black bar has this super sophisticated eye tracking device. It's looking at her eyes while she's looking at this cell. And it looks at, it basically, if you look at this diagram above, it's capturing her movements. And because she has a lot of movements with Rett syndrome, it's capturing exactly where her eyes are looking. And then when she looks at something, a cell, for more than 0.4 seconds, it triggers the word or the phrase that's in there, right? So that's how she's speaking. So she looks at 10, 15, 16, cells, and there are hundreds of words, dozens and dozens of pages she has to navigate to say simple things like, I want to go to the park, right? It's very hard for her to do that sequentially, but she has to wait to trigger things 0.4 seconds. That's when the computer knows, oh, she wants to say this, right? So the bar is at the bottom. And I thought I would obviously share with you what that looks like. We're gonna watch a 2-minute clip of Kalika and I negotiating a dinner time. So this is already like about 7:45 p.m. We've over the last year, she has a Google Home Mini, and thanks to the Christopher Reeve Foundation, I know, for people who have limited mobilities, and she loves to tell it what playlist she wants. Now that becomes dangerous for to allow her to do that when it's 7:30 and she is supposed to unwind. And so we have an argument, and I push back and I say, well, no, you're not listening to Punjabi hip hop and Bengali music right now. You have to listen to the Brazilian bossa nova that she listens to, and I pronounce it Gilberto because that's what Google understands when I speak. So dinner time, we're wrapping up. We're supposed to switch. And let me know if you're not able to hear the audio. Gilly.
Okay, Google, play Bradshaw.
No.
Okay, Google, play Bradshaw.
No, it's no.
Okay, Google.
No.
Okay, Google.
Okay, Google.
Play Rick Mom.
No. Okay, Google. Play Gets Gilberto.
Here's a YouTube music.
Okay, Google. Play Gets Gilberto. Kalika, it is bedtime. You cannot listen to Gets Gilberto. You cannot listen to Amrit Manakurnoy. Okay? No. Okay, Google. Play Gets Gilberto.
Okay, Google, play. Okay, Google, play. Okay, Google, play Sesame Street Elmo song.
Okay, Google. Play Gets Gilberto.
Come on, Irene. My next
Okay, Google. Play Gets Gilberto.
Playing the album Gets Gilberto on YouTube Music.
Kalika, sorry. No other music right now. Okay? All right? Okay? Kali. Okay?
Really?
Yep.
Really?
Really right now?
Bad.
No, it's not really bad. It is
Really?
good. No. Yes, really. Right now only Gets Gilberto.
Good.
Okay, good. I love you. But no other music. So that's just a little taste of what
Kalika wanting to listen to that. That's my favorite. Like, just that's amazing. Like, it's really, yes, really. You're going to bed soon. Fantastic.
This is actually very recent. This is about I would say about a month ago.
Oh,
And this is often the kind of interactions we have. And unfortunately, you're not seeing the tracker really well, but it's obviously she's triggering it and being very intentional about it. And as you can see, not an IQ of infant. Under any circumstance, not that IQ itself is any metric at all. I want to give a very quick glimpse also of, and I'm going to stop sharing and show you guys a video from YouTube. Let me just pull up the clip. I wanted to show you an example of what it looks like. Sorry, I'm now actually have lost all of you. I'm gonna share YouTube because here's a very like a 5-10 second clip. I'm reading this book, reading this poem to her about, it's kind of like the 10 Little Monkeys, but it's the Bengali version from 110 years ago, where little Bengali children die, and it teaches its accounting thing. And yeah, it's they're dying. Actually, the original version has Indians, quote unquote American Indians. That's where the entire origin story comes from, of people of color dying off. And that was it was said to a minstrel song. There's a whole thing about that. It went to the UK, the idea of, again, children dying, but children of color dying. And then somebody adopted it. But in India, 110 years ago, the person who wrote this also ended up bringing that back to life with an addition poem where you count up and the children magically appear. But then that's a different talk.
Wow.
But
No
yeah.
way.
So this one, I'm telling her that, you know, the rhyme is gach, which is in Bangla means tree. So he falls off a tree, and she has to respond with 5, which is panch. And so 5 panch, and so I'll show you what she does. Oops, sorry.
একটি মলো পিছলে পড়ে রইলো বাকি. What rhymes with গাছ? What number rhymes with গাছ? কি নম্বর রাইম করে গাছ দিয়ে? বল. That's right.
Okay, I'll try to not have all that screaming going on, because I always get very excited when you know, Kalika demonstrates that she's really falling around, because it requires her to. So the interesting thing that I wanted to kind of go back to this is, the interesting part of this is that Kalika is looking at English number, like, you know, numbers that are Western. Bangla has its own, you know, alphabetic, her numerical system, and she's not looking at that. So she's looking at, you know, because it doesn't come with the system. Bangla is not part of her software. It's too much work for me to create, you know, write those things down or figure out, you know, copy, paste. And anyway, I'll talk about that in just a second. But let me just go back to the slides real quick. Whoops, need to do of course, I need to do that fancy portion of the screen thing and get it right. Okay, so let me talk about that just a second. So Kalika has this very robust English system, right? And her first language is actually a language that is one of the 6th most widely spoken languages in the world. It is the 6th most widely spoken language in the world. And yet there's no speech software in it. I worked with an Indian company and gave them feedback and things, but what they've basically done is translated the English. And because Bangla and English are related somewhat distantly, because it's an Indo-European language, but they're not structurally, they're completely different. In terms of subject, verb, object. And so it doesn't work that way. Translation doesn't work that way. And you can't just put things in the same places. So I've been working over the past year with this software, trying to build a little AAC so that she can actually speak in Bangla, but it's really, really hard. It's impossible. Imagine trying to create an entire language system when you have no skills, no training, a child who's been home for 14 months, and on top of which, this is very skilled research that requires decades. So I've got little pockets where she speaks in Bangla. She has, and I've been doing, she's able to talk to my parents every single day, she does, in Bangla. But that's been one of the big constraints. Something that really drives me mad is, why is Norwegian, Danish available on this system? Why are languages, much smaller languages represented? There are 17 languages a part of this platform, but not the sixth most widely spoken language in the world. Part of this is politics. Part of this is the historical marginalization of Indic languages in particular. But there are a lot of individuals who are Bengali learners or Bengali speakers who don't have access to AAC, and don't have mothers or fathers who were able to create tiny systems either, because it's not part of their learning or training or anything. So anyway, I want to quickly move to kind of thinking about computer assisted language learning. It's thinking about applications of computers in language teaching and learning. Kalika's eye tracking device is a computer. It's actually a computer. It's a computer. It's a $15,000 computer. So it's not just any computer, but it costs a lot of money because they know they can, sell it for that. And it's a medical device, but it's also something that's actually fundamentally a computer. And so she's using most of her language learning, and all her language production happens with the tracker in front of her, right? So I wanted to think about some of the things, and I wanted to pull up, one of the classic pieces that, like from a handbook, to kind of go over some of the things people say about computer assisted language learning. So you have helps in enriching language skills, connects a learning place to the outside world, helps in relating academics to practical needs of the outside world, serves as a surrogate teacher. Things in red, I'm like, I don't know about that. Aids in collaborative and cooperative learning, is ideal for carrying out repeated drills. Again, I'm not sure that should be a red. I do it, except we're in the middle of a talk. Provides impartial feedback. Now, there is no such thing, and I think everyone on this Zoom realizes that, right? There's no such thing as impartial feedback. And we know, in particular, when computers give feedback, all kinds of crazy things can happen. Creates a realistic environment. Now, as fun and as authentic as the interaction might seem, if you're not seeing that Kalika's not talking and it's actually something else, if you just had a transcript, perhaps you wouldn't even know that there was a computer involved, right? If you just saw a transcript and no video. But it's not. Technology means Kalika's staring at a computer and not looking at me, right? And she has, with her significant disability issues, she has to turn like this to talk to me, or turn and look. It's very hard for her to do with her, with her body. And so, but that's how the tracker is best positioned, is in front of her. But so there are a lot of things that are problematic. Is ideal for integrating skills such as reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Sure, but so are many other things, right? And provides a choice of an appropriate learning strategy. And I think, again, all of us on this Zoom know that the best and most appropriate learning strategies are any strategies that work for your students, period, right? It doesn't have anything to do with technology. Pen and paper are technology. Everything is technology. But in this particular perspective, I think technology becomes foregrounded. So I wanted to throw out a few questions related to this, and this is my last slide. I want everyone to really pause and think, what do you think of as language? What is language to you? And again, I've shared my journey of being a mother to a child who, suddenly was told, I was told would never speak again. I also realized before she had her eye tracker and while she was nonverbal, how much you can talk with gesture and speak, like, gesture and eye expression. There is a world of language that happens there that is not recognized in the classrooms a lot of times. So really, forcing ourselves to think of what is language, what is literacy. We are very ableist. I am very ableist. I know in the, and I'm making a journey away from that, but I've been very ableist in my perspective on what is literacy. Again, have a PhD, which has the, says that it's a PhD in language and literacy education. I didn't understand what literacy meant until I had a child who had such significant and profound difficulties accessing literacy. How do we recognize and support multilingualism in any environment, right? Whenever, when in any context in which language learning is happening, there are other languages. In any American classroom, there are multiple languages somehow operating in that space. How are we accommodating that? How are we welcoming that? How are we thinking of that in relation to languages? What role does technology play within communicative encounters? And also, this is something that I have to keep always in mind. Technology is not what has to be at the center of this. The interaction has to be at the center of this. The communication has to be at the center of this, right? The technology is not what facilitates communication between me and Kalika. What facilitates communication between the two of us is our intersubjective relationship, right? The relationship we build by looking at each other, by being in each other's spaces. So to think about technology as a tool, but not to center that in learning and teaching. And what does it facilitate? But also, this is something I think about more than anything else. What are its constraints? What are issues of access? Who has this technology? We have a $15,000 equipment. We are a tiny minority in the world. In India, I found one eye tracker that anybody who has Kalika's disabilities, one eye tracker in a country of 1.4 billion people. But access here is very difficult too. I don't know that we would have been able to very easily say, let's buy a $15,000 equipment. We could not have just taken that decision immediately. But there are issues of access from the perspective of money, but also other, linguistic factors that we should be considering as well. So what, even though it, the tracker gives Kalika a voice, it is robbing her of the opportunity to have a beautifully expressive universe in her mother tongue. Her mother tongue is robbed of her because there is a company that does not believe Bangla deserves a seat at the table. And so these are some of the issues and I want to say, the Toby, when she's looking at different, characters, a lot of Jewish cultural elements don't exist. Hindu elements are almost completely non-existent. I think I found Diwali and one other thing in the symbol set, but basic things like even something like garbanzo beans doesn't exist. And color shading, shades of colors for a mixed race child, even for me, they're not representative. So there are a lot of limitations there. And I wanted to end on this note because for me, those constraints are really profound and they're rich points of departure for discussion. Whew, okay.
Thinking like we've had so many, okay, first of all, you already know I think you're incredible, but like you've got me thinking about like some of the previous conversations we've had where we've talked about the different aspects of representation in materials, which is a super important conversation, but you've added a layer that, again, like you said, ignorantly, like I hadn't even thought about for neurodiverse purposes, or even just culturally, like the input itself, if it makes sense. We are often like thinking about it from teaching in L2, and we taught the conversation centers around finding representative resources about like that C2 or C3, like about the culture in whatever, you know, all the different cultures that our language embodies. And now I'm like, I never even thought about that, like the pure input, like for Kalika to, like, you're going to have to create, or like you said, you either just had to like either reconcile some things or make some things, because that language itself won't even be there for her to use that for. I mean, like wow, you've blown my mind. Never even thought about that.
I want to give you an example because this is something you would find so accessible. So in the Bangla page, like Bangla's social page, greetings page, this is something we all do very early on in any language learning classroom, right? So
Right.
I put Namaskar, which is what you do like this in Bangla. So it's like a namaste equivalent, but for Bengalis. Now, she says that to her grandparents. And the first time I had put it in, my mother called and I was so excited. And Kalika, of course, on cue says, Namaskar. And my mom's like just staring at her. And then I'm like, Ma, she said Namaskar. My mother has some hearing issues. So I was like, Ma, did you hear her? My mother says, I don't know what to say because they're on FaceTime. And in for Bengalis, what you would have been doing is either a head nod, which doesn't really translate into a FaceTime conversation, or she would pat her head. And she can't do that. So my mother's like, I don't know what to do with this. Then she turned to my dad and I was like, can you not say it back? She said, no, because she's younger to me. She's so much younger. I cannot bow to her.
Oh, wow.
Know, because that's the idea is I'm prostrating myself in front of you.
Right.
So it was this complete cultural moment where, ooh, I put this in order to be culturally inclusive, and here I am. She can only talk to somebody.
Right. Like, oh no. Like, what about, like, yeah, 100. Oh my God. Kelly just put in the chat, like, these layers are mind blowing. You've seriously, yeah, I never, oh my God. Like, again, it's like we, you know, sometimes we're taught to teach language with culture separated, but it's just example 5 million bajillion of the fact that you cannot, I mean, you cannot have one without the other. And that is so interesting. And what a strange situation. Cause you're, like you said, I put this in for it to be kind of like a bonding moment. And
Exactly.
and now it's like, what do I do? That is so interesting. I can't even.
The other part of this is because I realized that she will only speak to, in terms of Bengali population, the people she'll talk to are, include me and my parents. And to me is, so Bengali actually has 3 levels of you. So it has a formal, and informal, and then intimate. And so I chose, because I don't have the time to build in 3 different, because every single verb is conjugated according to what the selection is. Everything will be conjugated according to that. So I was like not going there. So I just picked informal, but I realized I'm constraining her ability to learn about the different forms because she can hear them, but she's not able to utter them. So she can't call me mistakenly tui, which is, you intimate, or apni, which is the formal. So she doesn't get to make errors because I'm selective in what I'm exposing her to, right? But we do this in the classroom. We also do this in the classroom.
Oh my, like, it's almost, I think it's like what a lot of, it's like a curse, because a lot of language teachers would go, the same way we talk about sentence frames or sentence starters, where like they can't even make mistakes. Like, this is going to be great, just go ahead and give it to them. But also, how much do we experience and learn from those mistakes when you accidentally, when I say, oh, I just meet Nelson and I'm like, ¿Cómo estás? And he's like, ooh, not usted. Okay, awkward. Like, we just met and I don't know. I mean, all of those nuanced kind of things, like, I shouldn't even have a chance to experience that or even be exposed to it. That's so interesting. I'm going to be thinking about this for like a week now. Like, absolutely. And like you said, the technology as a tool, but as a layered tool. So like for her, it's everything. Like, it's integral. It's right there. It's, all of those kind of things. And then for some of our students, they don't need them, or we don't need to use them. And I've always said technology is so personal. So this past year, you know, like I might be comfortable using all of these tools. Somebody else might be comfortable using these tools or not. And how is that affecting the language? Like Kalika, like how is that affecting the actual language and the experience that they're having? Like, because I think when I think about it, I think of as a teacher and I focus on teaching and not learning. Man, holy
I,
moly.
I've actually had to do a lot of that. I don't think about learning from that perspective. I've been very focused on what the teaching issues are. And this is really focused, like this really sets that into sharp relief for me. And
Right.
I want to throw out here that Kalika's been on a Zoom, a classroom, 1 hour a day with teachers who have never seen an eye tracking device. And the kids don't know that she's using an eye tracking device because they've never been told that. And so she has an eye tracker. The iPad has to be on the side and she has to look and somehow trigger, and she has about 30 to 45-second delay when it comes to conversations.
Okay.
What you saw was very, very quick, but there are also times when she takes time to process. And imagine having to do that while on mute, and most of the times when she's talking, she's on mute. And so they have no idea that she talks because of this mutation that's happening in her life. It's just this. I mean, I'll be writing about it and I'll be talking about it for decades to come.
I can't, well, and it's but it's like all of the things that we know about language teaching, which when you look at being communicative and comprehensible, slow down, all of those kind of things, and also not just placing value on output. I mean, when I hear you talking about like how much she was understanding, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like when they're little, when if she had been like the first, when she was little, and then before the regression, like, I mean, they're obviously taking in so much input and there are so many ways we can do that. And I think a lot of times, I'll say it because I know I've done it, our lessons and our what's the word, curricula and just anything involved or my whole like process and approach 100% catered to neurotypical students, to students who learned it and were learning it like I had, and we totally wait for those, I think a lot of times like neurotypical responses and those behaviors, like language, like behavior, premature output, like all of that, where it's like, oh, okay, we're really, that's, I think we're really doing okay here. That's what we value so many times over, like you said, those interactions. And if technology can help with that, great. But if not, like it didn't create the bond between you all or whoever she's talking about, it just kind of assists it. But man, we do a lot of those same things.
A lot of ableism in
Yeah.
language learning and teaching, I think. And going back to my own experiences, because I was always surrounded by so many different languages, I never really paused to think about, who is not getting access, who has difficulty accessing because of things that, we're not paying attention to, like disability. And it really, I would want for foreign language teachers in particular to consider issues of disability before it hits them in their own lives, and so I wish I'd been, I'd known and understood the importance of being inclusive and understanding disability in whatever form it is. It exists in every human individual, and every individual is going to make the journey into disability at some point in their lives. And so I'm seeing that with my mom's loss of hearing, and seeing that with my dad's blind, becoming blind. They're all, this is a journey we are all going to make at some point in our lives, and they're invisible disabilities as well, right? But it's important to think about them before, because it's all around us. They just take different forms. We just need to be more open, to how understanding unfolds differently, and how it, how people take in language and produce language in very complex, sophisticated ways that we don't understand. Right? I didn't understand. I mean, Kalika produces some of the most sophisticated language, given how hard she has to fight, either when she has the device or even when she doesn't. She has to fight with every fiber of her being to be understood. That is complexity in language, production, not a 10-page essay. That's not where the complexity lies. The complexity lies in how human beings really take what they have, the fundamental desire to communicate and express themselves in as many languages, as many ways as possible. And I think the kind of the spectrum of diversity, in kind of thinking about how, what language is and what language learning means, I think it's really important to also consider that language is so many more things than what comes out of your mouth.
Ooh.
And you want to realize that without having a daughter who is nonverbal, right? You want to realize that because you have students who have something that prevents them from being able to talk. It could be cultural, could be social, could be economic, right? But it's what's restraining them, and we want to help everybody navigate that space as well as possible.
Whew. Holy, just like a whole sermon right there, because I mean, like,
because
no, because I mean, like, speaking truth, like that's I think it's for sure been a common theme throughout at least us talking on this series this spring, of really breaking down what you said, what language you value, what language you're expecting from your students, when, what does it look like, what is the behavior that accompanies it, is that equitable? And then the technology piece is just, we talk so much about just getting devices in the hands of students, but then the added layer of, okay, yeah, but what do they do? Like, even little things like you having mentioned everything about the eye tracking machine and the languages makes me go back to when we surveyed students last spring, and we said, okay, what, for the fall, like for right now, spring disaster, we're all like, shutting down. What do we do? Like, this is crazy. Then for the fall, we're surveying everybody saying, okay, what kind of device did you have? And our survey was so superficial. It was like, do you have, a smartphone? Yes or no? Do you have a computer? Yes or no? And so Chromebook, obviously computer, laptop, computer, desktop, computer, those are all very different. And there was no nuance in any of that. And so as we started the fall, and I'm sure a lot of the teachers on the call, or all the teachers on the call, can relate to, when we started the fall, you had students at home who chose virtual for safety and all that kind of thing, doing everything on a smartphone because they had checked, yes, I have a smartphone, but it was like an iPhone 6 and we're up to 12. So they are literally half of the iPhone series away. It doesn't even update anymore, the 6. And they had checked, yes, I have a computer, but it's an old desktop computer. So they're, and I'm sharing it with 3 other people, and that wasn't part of the survey. So just all of this nuance of like, it was just, do you, not what kind. We had students, and some still, but we had 2 students in the fall who were doing all of their classes on a PlayStation. Like, that was the only device in the home that got internet. So they're with a controller, going boop, 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 like Kalika is with the eye track. They're going boop, 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 letter by letter with the arrow. And like you said, it's incredibly exhausting. And so that's the student that you're going to give, 50 points off because it was late because they had to type an essay with a video game controller. Like, and they did it. How long ago would I have given up? August, I would have been done. Like, I mean, it's the nuance that when it comes to the devices themselves, just computer assisted anything, but computer assisted language learning, even just assignment completion, and then all of those social behavioral things that I know come up in various Lang Chat conversations and Twitter as well. Terry Waltz is one who is always, she's going to be towards the end of the series next month, May sometime. She's going to talk about neurodiversity in world language classes, because what do we do a lot of times? And especially now, how do we know they're participating? How do we know they're engaging? And like you said, Kalika is like muted for a few seconds. And then it's like, hold on, unmute, do this. It's like 3 moving parts. She's working her ass off to respond. And then it's like, oh, we missed it, or, whatever. And it's incredibly complex. How many times do we miss that in a language class? Because we go, Kelly, Tu responde que está, okay, I'm coming back to you and you're not off the hook. Okay. Usree, you know, I mean, and like we move on because we're like, we cater to neurotypical. We want output. We want a response. Let's go. Let's hurry up. Let's move on, you know, whatever. And who are we neglecting? Who are we excluding? And who are we making feel like language is not for them every day?
Exactly. And you know, 2 days ago, we received a draft of Kalika's IEP, which is the Individualized Education Plan, you know, to see where she's going to go. The teachers have only seen her 1 hour in person under mass circumstances. And they produced a 21-page document. None of the things they captured represented what Kalika could do, not one of them. We spent the entire weekend saying, she does this, she does this, she does this. She just doesn't do it under the 1 minute tiny window you give. She's talking that entire time, but if you're gonna mute a child and it takes 0.45 seconds for her to actually trigger a word, and you don't wanna wait that long, and we're moving on to the next child, you're never listening to my child. And so it becomes a space that's very fraught with you know, tension and stress, and you know, I think again the deficit perspective I see in teachers looking at my child. Though my goodness, I did not have half, not even a millionth of the resilience and ability to fight, to speak that she does. I did not have it. I just assumed it, and you know, didn't have to work at it. So I do hope you all, you know, think about this and you know, let it marinate. And you know, it's a very new area still. I struggle because we are my team of students and we're creating this literature in Rett syndrome. It does not exist. The idea that nonverbal children could talk is extremely new. And so, but again, I want people to be thinking about disability and neurodiversity in the classroom before having to, you know, learn the lesson in a very painful way. And I really wish I had the preparation. Everybody will meet disability in some form or another in their lives. It's better that we're prepared for it, you know, so.
And not even learn language, but also, like you said, learn multiple languges. You know,
Exactly.
the goal is not that, right, that Kalika can like communicate with the, no, in multiple ways.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. I mean, yeah, you've given me, wow. And I'm sure everybody like just so much to think about. And marinate. It's just getting like marinate and like, because also you think of IEPs as creating inclusive spaces, but what happens when the IEP is exclusive?
Right.
Like, or exclusionary? I don't know, like, oh,
Yeah.
wait a minute. Like, oh my God. We already have enough issues with them not being honored in a lot of ways, but
Right.
what if it just itself is inaccurate?
Exactly. Exactly.
Like,
I have a feeling that should be like all another conversation. Oh my goodness.
yeah, tomorrow, right? I know. Like, amazing. Well, you've now booked. Yeah, you're in. You're trapped because you said yes once.
Of course.
I am so grateful for. I'm obviously grateful for just the universe having put you in my life, because that your class was really, really amazing. And as we've moved on and, you know, stayed in touch and thanks to social media and all those kind of things, I'm so thankful for you sharing so much on such a personal level. I think I mean, I know your class is incredible, so I know you're an incredible teacher, but I think you're an incredible mom, and what an incredible like language advocate and now, you know, advocate for people with disabilities. Truly, this has been incredibly I don't know, profound for me, because I had never seen it in action, and so many layers. Thank you so much. And
No,
thank you
you.
for, just your time and all the things. I was hoping like Kalika would like like Jonathan would go, dude, you gotta get out. Like, you said an hour. We've had that happen a couple times.
She went, he had to come and sneak in and get the monitor.
Oh my God, amazing.
She
None of that,
went to
right?
sleep early today. That's why the screaming ended. But I would have had her come and say hello. It's just, but yeah, she was in a foul mood tonight. But
Same, Colin.
but
Me
thank
too,
you. Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure she was trying to DJ her way out of sleep some more. But Meredith, I want to say that I'm so grateful for your presence in Georgia and doing what you do. It's just such a gift, and we are very proud of you at UGA. And I was very excited and grateful when you suggested that I talk about Rett syndrome in the foreign language classroom context. I've never done anything like this. It's not the direction I've taken this work, and I had a lot of fun thinking through these issues and really delving into things that I hope to explore in the future. And I love being around teachers, and I'm going to be looking at the chat once the webinar is up and I can process. It's not letting me copy and paste, but it's hard for me to do both. But it'll be there. And
I'll send you the file.
Perfect. Thank you. Because I would love to
It puts
see.
it all in typewriter font and also single spaced. Really fun to read. It's like, hold on.
You know what? I'm very partial to single space. So feel free.
You'll love it. It's like, oh, hold on. That's fantastic. Yeah. No, please.
Thank you to everyone. I'm really great. Thank you for making so much time for me, my daughter, and really it's a gift for me, that I'm able to bring Kalika into my workplace. It's very special, and it gives me some sense of control over a disease that's really, really hard to live with. So I thank you guys for making, giving me some purpose. Thank you.
No, thank you for sharing. Thank you guys so much. We'll be back Thursday. Like I said, Dr. Bhattacharya, you're stuck now, so we'll see. Totally kidding. Totally kidding.
I'll be back. I would love to be back. Not Thursday.
I'll send you the one about neurodiversity, but we won't obligate you to any other one. Zoom link's the same. So, all right.
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Happy Tuesday.